And good evening. My name is Alice Knapp. I'm president of the Ferguson Library, and this is actually our second session of CrimeCONN 2 Express. This is a program that is sponsored by the Friends of the Ferguson Library, and I just want to tell you that the Friends are the secret sauce that make the Ferguson Library great. They are the ones who bring these fantastic author programs to you, and on top of that, proceeds from that wonderful bookshop that we have at the main library in the Harry Bennett branch help underwrite a lot of our other programs and services as well. So if you enjoyed tonight's program, think of joining the Friends of the Ferguson Library or sending them a donation. But in any case, it's through their efforts that we are having this wonderful CrimeCONN 2 session. And we do it, of course, with Mystery Writers of America, New York City chapter. And that is part of the reason why, in partnership with them, we get these fabulous authors. I'm now going to introduce you to Tom Straw. He's a Connecticut writer. He's an Emmy-nominated TV producer and author of 7 New York Times bestsellers under the pen name Richard Castle. And you should read these. They're a lot of fun. He still writes and produces TV, most recently Showtime's Nurse Jackie, and is also a director on the National Board of the Mystery Writers of America. So Tom, take it away.
Thank you, Alice, and everyone at the Ferguson Library in Stamford. You know, for years, the Ferguson Library hosted CrimeCONN's annual in-person panels, and now for the second time since the pandemic, they've organized this Zoom series so Mystery Writers of America's New York, Connecticut chapter can go virtual. Tonight, our second of 3 consecutive Thursday night programs in this series is called Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood, Breaking Out of Genre Tropes. We have a panel of exceptional authors, plus one who's our moderator. So first, let's say hi to the panel. Hammett Award and Nero Prize winning novelist Stephen Mack Jones is the author of the critically acclaimed thrillers August Snow and Lives Laid Away, which was shortlisted for the CWA UK Ian Fleming Steel Dagger Award. He has also contributed an essay to the nonfiction book, What Now? Essays on Life After Trump. Once upon a time, he worked in advertising and marketing communications, for which he is deeply sorry and promises never to do that again. Mr. Jones' latest novel, Dead of Winter, book 3 in the August Snow series, was just published in May. Hartford's own Juliet Grames was raised in a tight-knit Italian-American family where storytelling, loud storytelling over long tables of food, was the preferred Sunday activity. After school, she would race home to type out novels on her dad's Word Perfect program. Her first job was at the public library until she worked at Borders, a company with a future. After graduating from Columbia magna cum laude with a degree in history, Juliet spent a year interning at a literary agency, which was enough time to convince her she could never be a literary agent. She became an editorial assistant at John Wiley & Sons, eventually moving on to the Overlook Press. Juliet has worked in independent publishing ever since and has spent the last 11 years at Soho Press, where she is SVP, associate publisher, and curator of the critically acclaimed Soho crime imprint. The 7 or 8 Deaths of Stella Fortuna, her first novel, is a culmination of years of research, interviews, and writing in the early morning before the workday. Lou Anne Rice is the New York Times best-selling author of 36 novels that have been translated into 24 languages. In 2002, Connecticut College awarded Rice an honorary degree, and she also received an honorary doctorate from the University of St. Joseph. In 2014, she received the Connecticut Governor's Arts Award for excellence as a literary artist. Several of Rice's novels have been adapted for television, including Crazy in Love for TNT, Blue Moon for CBS, Follow the Stars Home and Silver Bells for the Hallmark Hall of Fame, and Beach Girls for Lifetime. Rice is a creative affiliate of the Safina Center, an organization that brings together scientists, artists, and writers to inspire a deeper connection with nature, especially the sea. Rice is an avid environmentalist and advocate for families affected by domestic violence. She lives on the Connecticut shoreline. And now our moderator. Our moderator is a Connecticut teacher and writer, Sari Rosenblatt, who won the 2020 Iowa Short Fiction Award for her short story collection, Father Guards the Sheep, which also won star reviews from Mother Jones, LitHub, and Electric Literature. Wally Lamb calls her stories polished, perfect gems. Her fiction, set in New Haven, Middletown, and especially Naugatuck in its rubber manufacturing heyday, has been published in the Iowa Review and has won prizes from Glimmer Train, New Millennium Writings, Ms. Magazine, and Nimrod Journal of Poetry and Prose. She was honored as a Penn New England New Discovery Writer and has taught classes at the University of Iowa, Wesleyan University, Green Street Arts Center, and for the past 12 years, Educational Center for the Arts in New Haven. Apologies to Eric Siegel, but moderating means never having to say, "You're Sari." It's all yours.
Oh, well, I'm going to remember that. Thank you. Thank you so much. Boy, I'm so honored to be with all you just illustrious writers. And thank you, Tom Straw. Thank you to the Ferguson Library. And the Mystery Writers of America, the New York, Connecticut chapter, for really moving and shaking this conference into being. I have to start with a little story because I always start with a little story. And I just have to say I was in my local bookstore yesterday. And, we're talking about genre tonight. I was kind of interested in what categories your books would be placed in. But so I go to the customer desk and I said, I asked for the book by title. I said, I'm looking for the 7 or 8 deaths of Stella Fortuna. So the woman types it in and she goes, is it 7 deaths or 8 deaths? I have to know, it's not coming up. I said, it's the 7 or 8 deaths of Stella Fortuna. She said, let's try by author. So I just had to pass it along. I thought it was so deeply charming. And by the way, when I did locate your book, they had it. It was in straight fiction. I mean, they have mystery, they have memoir. Blah, blah, blah. So you were in straight fiction. And when I look in the back of the book, it says a literary fiction. And then Luann, so I asked for your latest book, The Shadow Box. So we go to mystery. And she said, no, we're out of it. We'll have to reorder. So I can't believe they're out of your book. So I go to just fiction, and there you are. You're not in the mystery section. You're in fiction, and you're next to Marilyn Robinson, who wrote Housekeeping, very literary.
My heart.
Yeah.
I'm surprised I wasn't in romance.
That's no, we can talk about that. You mentioned that before. And Steve, I'm so sorry. You came in late in the game, so I wasn't able to look up your book in the bookstore and see where it was located.
Don't worry, I hear the same thing from family.
So, the topic of the evening is really one of genre and categories. And I guess where the publisher places you all, is one thing. But it's curious to me where is a genre you might place yourself, but also thinking his genre influenced your work. I mean, when you set out to write, you set out thinking, I'm going to write a mystery. I'm going to write a piece of literary fiction. I'm going to write a crime book. Does genre ever enter your consideration? Is you're just thinking about how you're going to open this book, even if you don't know where it's going to go, but just, the incipient, the beginning, opening sentences. Do you ever have a sense of what am I going to call this thing? Is this going to be memoir? Is this going to be romance? Is this going to be lit fic, women's lit, memoir? Okay. Luann, I know you've had something to say about this.
I totally do. I'm like holding it in. So I grew up reading The New Yorker and probably mostly loving literary fiction, but also really loving crime and suspense. but never thinking of it as a genre, just thinking of what I love. And, and I dropped out of college to write. I didn't go to graduate school. I didn't have any, I just knew that I wanted to be a good writer. But the funny thing is that once, I started getting published, and I thought of myself as a writer of fiction. And my mother was an English teacher, so she wouldn't say a fiction writer, she would say a writer of fiction. And so, but when I kind of came along, if you wrote the kind of stuff I wrote, which was a lot about families and relationships, you were considered a women's fiction writer. You weren't, it wasn't general fiction, it wasn't literary fiction, it was women's fiction. And it didn't, I never let it bother me, but it sort of did deep down. And then I also write a lot about love. And so I would often be, as I joked earlier, I'd be found in the romance category. And I think romance writers are fantastic and wonderful. But I didn't write, I was like, I'm Luann, I don't write romance, rice. But that's how I was often, placed. And so it was kind of, I became early on in my writing career, I got very numb, or sort of not even numb, but almost amused by the idea of where the bookstores put me, where the publisher put me. And, I knew where I put myself, like how I felt about myself as a writer. And so I never really thought of myself in a category, but I found myself in categories a lot. And the one that bothered me the most was women's fiction. That was just like, it felt so separate, like why? And I know other, friends of mine who are my age or in my sort of, we came up in that sort of era. We felt that way too, and so, yeah, I have feelings.
Luann, I feel like you've touched on the conundrum here, which is just genre in general, which is there's a good side and a bad side to everything, right? The publisher's argument for that label women's fiction, which isn't deployed very much anymore, is that, well, women make up 85% of book readers and book buyers. Don't you want to reach that huge readership and honor them with this genre that they love, and how great is this? But the flip side is that by putting this genre label on, it's supposedly a genre label, that this is fiction for women, and then making that be a different thing than just fiction. I mean, then we have the built-in misogyny there is really mind-breaking. And there's sort of like an analogous little conversation you can have about any genre label, right? And it's really hard because I think the most important concept that I don't have to tell anyone in this room about, but I do feel like I have to tell the world in general, is that genre isn't a genre label isn't a besmirchment. Like the fact that you have a genre label doesn't mean you're not writing literature. Like literature exists in every genre, and the quote unquote genre of literary fiction has tons of absolute trash in it. So I mean, the way that you need to write a good book, and whatever the book is, your publisher then puts an incredibly reductive label on it in order to try to maximize the sales there. But yeah, it's a constant frustration of my, I mean, okay, so Sari, you asked where we put ourselves. I just want to say that, like, physiologically, I put my person in the crime genre. This is my life. I'm a crime fiction editor. I will get up on my soapbox and I will tell you why crime fiction is the best genre. This is my second time at CrimeCONN. The first time, it was actually the first crime convention I ever went to when I was a baby editor. I mean, a baby crime fiction editor. I'd been other kinds of editors before. So this is 11 years ago in 2010. And, or maybe it was 2011. The guest of honor was Charlaine Harris. So it was the year that Charlaine Harris was there. And I was new to this world of crime fiction, and everyone was so nice to me. And there was a big dance at the end of the night. I was like, I haven't danced since college, but okay, we'll try. And I looked up at one point and I realized I was dancing with Charlaine Harris. And I was like, well, I'm committing to this genre because these are the nice people. Okay. So I will stand on my soapbox and tell you why writing crime fiction is great. In terms of what I write, I mean, that's a little bit all over the place because I kind of like, want to write everything, but the goal of writing a crime novel is my elusive. I'm working on that. I don't feel like I deserve it yet, but I'm trying to head there. What about you, Steve?
Well, I don't think it's been too long. As Luann was talking about being classified as a women's writer, the same thing has happened, and to a lesser extent has happened with writers of color. Um, it's my contention that publishers were leaving billions of dollars on the table because the thought was, well, this is a Black writer. How do we market to a Black audience? As if a Black writer was only writing to Black people. And there was intertwined with that little tumorous thought was, well, how much do Black people actually read crime fiction, romance, et cetera, and so forth? And I think publishers these days are finding that they have, over the many decades, left billions of dollars on the table. And I think they're realizing that, and I think they in general are making amends to that end. Not necessarily for any benevolent reasons. That benevolence may be a part of the equation, but you know, if suddenly a book published by a Black or Hispanic male or female brings in enough money to pay the mortgage on the house in the Hamptons, hey, why not? Why not? And going back to the genre discussion, I don't think any of us, and I could be wrong, so please feel free to tell me. I don't really think any of us like to think of ourselves as genre writers. I'm new into this world, and I still think of myself as a storyteller. And it may be a story that has blood and guts in it, but, you know, so did Titus Andronicus. I mean, Titus Andronicus could be classified as crime fiction. Othello could be classified as a whodunit, even though we didn't know who did it. So I think this whole genre thing is, in some ways, it's the publishing industry's way of making selection easier for their market. I mean, you know, if I love knitting and crocheting, which I've been meaning to take up, you know, I don't want to wade through a lot of things. I want to go to the section that offers that. It saves time. It gets me to what I want faster. So I don't really have any personal qualms with genre.
You know, I'm wondering, you know, we're talking maybe the publisher's point of view, where they want to put you.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, say I'm a writer, I'm a beginning writer, you know, I've started a book. I don't know what it is yet. I'm just wondering if there's other uses for genre that can help a writer. You know, you're writing a book, you don't, I don't know, you know, maybe you get an image or you start with some story, you don't know where to go. All right, well, maybe you think I'll put a little memoir in. maybe I'll talk a little bit about myself. Can genre be used to open up a piece of writing, a mystery? So Juliet, I mean, your book, I'm reading your book. It's just this stunning, sprawling family saga. And, I have to believe, and I think I know this, that some of this is really based on a real Stella. So in fact, you love the crime writers, and you feel very honored maybe to put in that category, but did calling on a family story, help you with something, help you move this piece of writing along?
This is a really interesting question, and I've kind of been thinking about how I would answer it even since Steve was talking. When you said that none of us identify as genre writers, this is actually an unusual group because all three of us write things that didn't quite originate in the heart of the genres that we're publishing in. We're writing things that are, I think genres are expansive and they're flexible, and that's one of the beautiful things about them. But there's always a core, like a heart, that the genre readership, the most faithful people who identify as genre readers are looking for something at the heart. And the easiest example I can think of off the tip of my tongue is in the romance genre, there needs to be an HEA, that's a happily ever after. It's a contract that the person who's publishing in the genre makes with the reader, that there's going to be a happy ending to this book. The reader feels safe going into this book, knowing they're going to have that, whatever other twists and turns there are along the way. I think in some of the genres that we represent here, the boundaries are a little more flexible, but certainly at the heart of crime fiction publishing, there are some beautiful forms for different kinds of micro genres within what we do. And I think that there are a number of incredibly well-read and scholarly crime fiction readers, genre readers, who identify as such, who know so much about the genre, its history, its jokes and its referential points, that when they read within that heart, that like beating heart, they are so savvy and they pick up on every plot trick that's been used before. And in order to really impress them at a high level, you have to be kind of formally advanced and very well read within this genre. And I think most of us are actually writing in a periphery where we can be more flexible, where we don't necessarily have that level of knowledge of the genre itself, but we have, thriller elements, or we have mystery elements to what we write, or there's a crime that I could make an argument for absolutely any piece of literature. Like, try me, I will explain why it's a crime novel. Right. But that's because I'm a genre apologist. But yeah, as the flip side, so as a reader, I confess I identify as a genre reader. I'm a cheater, though. I'm not faithful to crime. I'm also a sci-fi fantasy reader, and I have been since I was a tiny child. And I know going into a book, if I see a dragon on the cover, I'm probably going to be satisfied about that. That's a signal to me that this book is going to make me feel a way that I like feeling, right? So I'm a person who loves genre, but genres plural. And I think as a writer, there's a more kind of ADHD to your engagement with what your text is. If you have an idea, you write the idea, and then trying to figure out where it goes later. Sometimes it's fiction, sometimes it's nonfiction, sometimes, Sari, as you were saying, it's drawn from real life, sometimes it's completely fabricated, sometimes there's crime, sometimes there's magic, sometimes I just want to write an essay about a dead author I really admire that I want more people to read. So I don't know. I think that that's a tricky question.
The 7 or 8 deaths, I love the title, 7 is 8, but am I correct in thinking there's a lot of your family history in here?
It was definitely, it's not a crime novel. It's not. And I'm grateful to the crime community for letting me hang around with them. And I do promise them that I'm trying to write a crime novel. It's just really hard.
No, but
yes, based on my family history.
From the beginning with it's a mystery. Why are the sisters at odds with each other after being so linked?
Look at you. See, you're like me. You can make the case for any book.
But I'm sorry to pin you down, but yes, there are memoir elements. This is a story. Should I not be revealing that?
It wasn't. So my family, they are Italian immigrants. So the book is about two sisters. It is fictitious, but the sisters were inspired by my grandmother and her sister and their origin story. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's just,
Yeah.
it's so good. It's
But here's the thing, and this is overt, and the difference between me and either of these other gentle people here is that I have used my biography and my memoir, like the memoir elements of my books, in my marketing copy about the book. But every author is dumping themselves into whatever they write, even if they're writing about dragons.
all right.
For sure.
You know,
Especially if they are.
I bet both of these other folks have had people walk up to them and make assumptions about them because of the main character of one of their novels.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Would bet money.
Yeah. No, I didn't. I was in a fictional world with yours, total fiction, but I thought I had, okay, never, who even cares? Luann, I'm dying to ask you. All right, so maybe you don't feel, squarely in that mystery crime, but when you open two novels with strangulation,
Oh God, I didn't even think I did. That's so bizarre. I didn't realize that. Isn't that bizarre? I didn't even think of that. Thinking about the one I'm writing now.
well, the shadow box, I don't want to say too much, but there is a
True.
there's a
You're right. You're right. I'm not disputing it. Yeah.
definite.
I just hadn't really thought of it, like, because I don't plot. I'm like, I never plot.
Oh, I
So,
love this.
yeah, I just don't. And in each of the novels you're speaking of, one is Last Day and one
Right,
is
last day.
So Last Day was actually based on a crime, a terrible murder that affected my family. And something that both Juliet and Stephen have said about how writing about crime is really writing about life. I mean, they didn't say it in that exact way, but that's what I absorbed. And I think it's what life has a lot of pain and secrets and terribleness in it, and also lots of other things. But in my own life, I've had a couple of things happen that were true crimes, like not only just true crimes, but have been on true crime shows, like on Dateline. And
Yeah.
Aphrodite Jones called me, a couple of years ago and said, will you speak on this one incident in your life? And I said no, but I kind of gave her my blessing, because I mean, what can you do? It happened. But so I'm this weird person who's had so much love in my life and so many blessings in my life, but have had several murders actually touch
Wow.
my life personally. And the one in Last Day, it's been on so many shows, and if I told you the details of it, you might go, oh yeah, I saw that one on Oxygen, on whatever the shows are. But I think because of that, like, it's why I turned from just writing about the mysteries and sort of private crimes of life and secrets under your own roof to actually writing about something, a thriller, where who did it, why did they do it, what did the courts do about it, because I have gone through it, and it, it really, it changed me. And it's weird because as a kid and as a young reader, as much as I said I love to read The New Yorker, I also love to read Rex Stout and George Simenon and Dorothy Sayers and Ruth Rendell. So I've always loved reading mysteries, but then to have it like affect you is very, very different. So the strangulation part in the real life crime that touched my family, there really was a strangulation. It's true. And that was Last Day. And then in the
Shadow box.
The shadow box was actually, based on, it wasn't really based on anything in my own life, except it sort of was influenced by or inspired by the Jennifer Dulos case.
Oh,
which,
really?
yeah,
Oh, very interesting.
I'm really affected by emotionally, as many of us are in the world, but in Connecticut in particular.
Oh,
So
I wouldn't have picked up on that.
yeah,
That was so well done.
thank
That
you.
was your books. I have to say I guess so far I fall into the literary fiction, even although that doesn't seem like me, but it kind of is. But your books are so compelling. I mean, they're like
Oh,
you
thank
can't
you,
put those
Barry. That
down.
means so much to me because I love your writing. I discovered you after we met through CrimeCon, and I'm a huge fan of yours. And your stories in your book are just, they're luminous. They're amazing.
Yeah, that's very sweet.
Yeah.
Um, Steve, I have to ask you, and I'm sorry because you were gracious enough to come in last minute. You know, I wasn't able to read. Um, what's the name of your latest book? Dead of Winter. Dead of Winter. So
Yes. Oh,
how did that book?
you mean the book that I have right here?
Geez, just
Sometimes it
so
just
happened.
attaches to my face. I don't know how
So
that happens. But
and
I'm sorry?
just so happens that you have that book there. Um, is there did you pull from any other genres, or how did that story come to you?
Well, this is the third book in my August Snow series. And to be honest with you, I was happy that I had the first book published. I could have died happily right then and there. But for those who are unfamiliar with it, August Snow is a former Marine, and he was a Detroit policeman, a detective lieutenant, who was unjustly fired from his job. He sued the department and won $12 million. And all he wanted to do was go back to his childhood home and start fixing his street up in Mexican Town, which
Oh,
is a portion of Detroit, southwest Detroit, called Mexican Town. And he is half African American, half Mexican American, or a Blaxican. And that is who he is. He would just as soon live his life quietly, flipping houses, wallowing in the memory of his beloved parents. But situations pull him in. Hence the genre of mystery / thriller. There's a good amount of how shall I say, violence, but also there are some great recipes in there, some great food, because
ah,
honestly, I cannot write a character who doesn't eat and appreciate food, because I think it's food itself is an expression of one's culture, one's upbringing. He loves Mexican American food. He loves African American food. He loves to cook. That is the way he decompresses. That's the way he stays in touch with the spirit of his beloved Mexican American mother. Sometimes when it's African American food, he's playing Miles Davis in the background, and which belonged to his father. So cooking for him is almost a way of conjuring their spirits.
Right. Sensing that.
Yes.
So we could look for you in the cookbook crime.
Well, I would actually argue that whatever genre you publish in, the way to elevate your book to that level of being pure literature is to add really good food writing in it. That's the secret, Steve, isn't it? So there's actually a question from John Valeri. I don't know if this is time for questions, but we have to ask it now, because if you can answer it, I'll try to cook it. It is, if your new book, Dead of Winter, was a pie, what kind of pie would it be? Think carefully, because I promise you, Steve, I'm going to try to make it.
Oh, that's so kind.
And then I'm going to eat it. I wasn't going to share it.
Then I'll eat it.
It would probably be
I want to guess your pie. I want to guess
like
your
a peach pie, but it would have like a touch of cayenne.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Ooh, yeah.
Something that would make you wake up, something that would make you want to slap your mama.
It's slightly
So
mental in that spiciness.
that-
There's
you know
another
that-
question. I don't want to neglect this question, Steve.
Yes.
Hang the food thought.
ahead.
For Stephen, since you are a poet and playwright, as well as a novelist, how do these other forms impact your fiction writing? Ho.
Well, to whoever the kind person was that asked the question, I was a moderately good poet. In fact, the first thing I ever published was published in The Atlantic.
Wow.
I think I was 17 or 18. But I'm better at reading poetry and better at absorbing good poetry. If someone were to say, Steve, I'll give you a year to write a really great poem, or 3 months to write a novel, I would take the novel all the time, because it's to me, it's much harder to be a brilliant poet like Pablo Neruda and Seamus Haney and Nikki Giovanni. It's much more difficult, but I learned from them.
Well, that's what I want to ask you. Are there elements of poetry? Did you learn something from poetry in terms of imagery or the zigzag? Poets will, line to line, they can change course, and of course there's surprises. So I'm just wondering if there's elements of poetry that may have informed or helped you to further your work, fill out a scene.
Overall, poetry taught me the importance of word choice. It taught me the individual color and smell and feel and gravitas and weightlessness of single words, the emotion and the intellect that can be conveyed in a stanza. So poetry, my suggestion to folks out there that are writing, starting out earlier than me, please, God, let that be. Read a lot of poetry, read good poets, Rainier Marie Rilke, Baudelaire. Learn how they use words to conjure images or feelings, thoughts, and all of it swirling together.
Yeah, that's
And
really good.
playwriting just taught me how to shut up and listen to the way people speak.
Mm.
So that's, yeah.
I would love to jump in for a second, Stephen, because I'm so fascinated by so much of what you just said. I started out with poems. You know, first of all, I was a young poet too. That's my first publication was poems. But I love what you said about reading poetry and like listening to words, and the way that language is used is so important. But
Yes.
wait, so you just said get started earlier than you, but you were published in the Atlantic at 17 or 18. I need to know, what was that? Like, that's amazing.
Well, the poem was called The Dream of 13 Black Women. And I got paid 60 whole dollars. So I moved out of the house. I bought a Maserati.
Of course.
No, but it was a magical moment because it was the Atlantic,
Yeah.
and two, because they actually paid me for something that in its writing was its own reward. And
Can I just ask you, like, how did, I mean, the Atlantic, to be so young, like to have the desire to be a published poet and to be published at that age in the Atlantic of all places, like, that's amazing. So congratulations on that alone. Like,
well, thank you.
How did you do it? How did you submit to your poem?
Those were the days when you wrote on the IBM Selectric.
Right.
Yep.
And a machine that I still love.
My dad sold Olympia typewriters, so
Olympia was great.
I had an Olympia, but I respect the IBM.
Oh, Olympia made great typewriters. This is a whole other show.
I know. We need to like go private after this.
Exactly. But yeah, and I just put it in a, one of those 8.5 by 11 envelopes
With a self-addressed stamped envelope, of course.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yep. The sad truth is you can't make a living writing poems. You have to have another job.
No, but still to be published in the Atlantic.
No, I'm not discrediting. That's such an honor. But
I know it's better than money. I mean, oh my God, I'm in awe. I'm literally in awe of this right now.
Well, I would love to leave you in a state of awe, but just remember, I spent 30 years in advertising, marketing, communications, trying to sell you motor oil.
We'll talk about word choice, that comes into poetry, and you have your metaphors and your images.
Yeah, but then, there's that glowing angelic side of having had a poem published in the Atlantic, and then there's 30 years of darkness.
Which we have anyway.
What kind of car you drive there, ma'am? Oh, that's a great car. That's a beautiful car. But what kind of motor oil are you using? Because motor oil is the life's blood of a car.
Talk about metaphors. See, you learned that from poetry. Please.
No,
Okay.
that was sin.
I want to be responsive to our people writing in questions. So, in fact, maybe we can end with this. I don't know. Maybe we have more time. But what books are on your nightstand now? I'm reading all of you.
You have excellent taste, Sari.
Yeah, no, I still haven't found out why the sisters are estranged.
Uh,
Oh,
I have,
sisters.
I'm so
Well,
happy I got to go.
well,
I'll name a couple. The Killing Hills by Mr. Offutt. God, I just went blank on his first name.
Chris
And-
Moffat?
Chris
Chris,
Offutt.
yeah.
Oh, he's wonderful.
The Killing
Oh,
Hills.
Yeah.
And also,
Now, excuse me, he's a
yes,
short story writer too.
I'm
And
sorry.
he's a short story writer.
Yes.
And what
Yes.
is this? Are these stories or a novel?
No, this is a novel.
It is a novel.
The Killing Hills. And also, I read it a while ago, but it still haunts me. A book by an author, Nigerian author named Femi Kayode, Light Seekers, which is brilliant. And that doggone Rachel Housel Hall, I can't seem to shake anything that she writes. She's got a new book coming out, so that's where I'm at. Also, a nonfiction book on the Vatican. Don't ask.
Oh my God. Dominus Vobiscum.
In nomine Padre Spiritus Sanctus.
Boy, Izmir, I don't know what you're doing. All right, others, Luann?
Oh gosh, I just read a book by wonderful suspense writer named Deborah Goodrich Royce, and her book is called Ruby Falls.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And I'm actually doing an event with her in Rhode Island in a couple of weeks, and I really can't wait because this book is so shockingly amazing. It's a psychological thriller, and it has to do with a woman whose father essentially disappeared from her life at a very early age, and how that affected her. And Sarah, you and I were emailing earlier about trauma, and how both Juliet and I talk about
Yes,
write
yes.
about trauma and how
Yeah.
it affects our writing and affects our lives. And Deborah's book is in that category. Like it's a thing where, and I'm not saying about her personally, I have no idea where it came from in her own life, but it's how something in a person's early life affects them in a way that creates this unbelievably traumatic and thriller-esque, adulthood. And it's so well done. And so I recommend that. It's Ruby Falls.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really great. And then anything by Elle Marr, and it's Lellemarr. And she's written a couple of thrillers that are really fantastic, and she should be celebrated and widely read. She's awesome.
All right,
And
thank
of
you.
course, Juliet. And now I'm going to read Stephen, and I can't wait. The minute we get off this call, I am buying all your books. It's like, I can't wait. So, and I want to get that poem. I want to get that poem from the
Yeah,
Atlantic.
I want to get the poem too.
I know.
Juliet and
Oh, and by the way, and Sari,
yes, thank
your
you.
book. Oh my gosh. I mean, your book is incredible. Like,
Thank
as I mentioned, I hadn't read you before, but after I met you through here, it's so beautiful, and it's not suspense per se, but it's so exquisite. And the way you write about just relationships and life and the fragile moments, like, it's really wonderful. So congratulations, and all your awards and all your, you're like this, it's amazing that you're our moderator, because you're like such a prize winning.
Oh, please.
No, it's true. Like, we're talking Iowa, like, so anyway,
Kind,
yeah.
you're very kind. Juliet, you must be reading all the time for your job. I
oh
know.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, but also for everything else too. I will say, my two genres, what I'm reading right now. Okay, so I don't know if anyone has seen Mayor of Easttown, or if they really like that. And they were looking for some really awesome Philly crime fiction. You have to check out Liz Moore's Long Bright River, which is about a female cop
great.
investigating against the opium epidemic, a sort of missing persons case that turns into murder. It's a gorgeous book. It's so good. It's so good. My other crime fiction favorite from last year, which is maybe not quite squarely genre because I didn't see it getting picked up by all of the genre lists, but it's so crimey, is American Spy. You have to read American Spy. It is so good. The premise is it's set in the 1980s, and it's about a young Black woman from New York City who, against her kind of community pressures, ends up joining the FBI and then is recruited by the CIA to try to infiltrate a rising, very charismatic African politician's kind of regime and bring it down for the CIA. It's like a perfect novel. You have to read it. And then on the other side, if we have other like dragon book readers in the audience, I'm reading an absolutely terrific epic fantasy called Poppy Wars by R.F. Kuang, which is sort of like Harry Potter meets Sun Tzu. It's like set in an imaginary version of Chinese history about a very competitive military academy, and the protagonist is female, and it's awesome. So those are but I also want to say, yeah, you have to read this, they pay me to say this, but you have to read Stephen Mack Jones's August Snow. It's the first book in his series. I know that he's not a Connecticut writer, but Steve, aren't you impressed by how warm and loving Connecticut writers are with this group here? And aren't you going to come visit us in person?
You know, I am not at all surprised at how warm and wonderful Connecticut writers are, because, well, I know Jimmy Ben, and you know, he's pretty much the opposite. He's a terrible man.
I never should have introduced those two. It's my fault.
But I have to know now, where are you from, Steve? Where are you? Where are you now?
I'm in suburban Detroit.
Oh, okay.
Well, let's just say Detroit. Yeah, Detroit.
Cool.
But Juliet, I know that it would seem like a plant for you to say this. And everybody would just go. But Naomi Hirahara's Clark and Division, that's got to be on your list too.
I do. When I do panels, I try not to recommend books by authors I've edited, because it seems like.
I know.
Thank you for bringing it up, Steve.
And
that name again?
It's Clark and Division. It's coming out in August, and it's set in 1944. And the main character is a 20-year-old Japanese American woman who has just been released from incarceration at Manzanar. And she's in Chicago, where her family has been forcibly moved, and she's trying to investigate the murder of her older sister. It's really, really good. It's so good. Oh,
Naomi Hirahara is a wonderful writer. So.
Can you repeat the title again? Can you
Clark and Division. Luann, I will get you a copy because I know where they live. But
I would love that. Thank you. I would
wanted to. Luann is basically my neighbor, so I wanted to extract a promise from her on camera that when Steve comes to visit, the three of us can all have a bourbon together, because I think, yeah, we have so much more to talk about.
And can we do that soon?
Yeah. Come see us.
Hey, I'm vaccinated.
Me too.
And Sarah, it will be a little bit of a schlep for you, but you know, if you don't mind an hour's drive.
You're very kind. You're very kind. Thank you very much. Okay, I think we're just about out of time. I don't know, I have to say, you guys have really kind of transformed my life, that I'm going to be reading more crime and mystery. I love it. I mean, you know, during the pandemic, I admit I watched a lot of these British murder mysteries on TV, and I had to watch one every night, I don't know, they just engaged me and transported me in a way that nothing else did. And Luann and Juliet and Stephen, I'm going to read you. You know, I'm just so engaged in your work that really I'm so glad I got to be moderator, because I'm exposed to work I wouldn't ordinarily.
Gary, I just have to say that I have seen half of an episode of Midsummer Murders through 21 seasons. I don't know how any of them end because I just nod off.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, that's me too. They are very helpful for sleep, you know, and during the pandemic when we were all so
Yes.
stressed. You know, I'm waiting for our MC to come in any minute, Tom Straw.
I keep turning around. The sun is like
I predict
changing. Sorry.
I have been thinking of nothing but peach pie with cayenne. I haven't heard a thing anybody said after that was uttered.
I want that
Sari,
too.
is
I would
that
like some.
Sari, thank you very much, and for your amazing guests. I'd like to invite our audience to Zoom in next Thursday, same time, same Zoom, for We Got to Get Out of This Place, How Changing Up Settings Can Free Your Imagination, with moderator Scott Adlerberg and panelists Kara Black, Timothy Hallinan, and Johnny Temple. Thanks to Mystery Writers of America's New York, Connecticut chapter for putting this on. Let me add a special mention to Chris Knopf, Jill Fletcher, Charles Salzberg, and tonight's closer, who gets credit for the save, John Valeri. We are grateful to the Ferguson Library in Stamford, Connecticut for its ongoing support. That includes President Alice Knapp and programming specialist Barbara Thomas. Without them, it would be murder. Also, thanks to Elm Street Books in New Canaan, the Ferguson's bookseller. A reminder that tonight's hour was recorded and is going to be available on YouTube tomorrow. So if you missed any of it, go to the Ferguson Library link. On behalf of Sari Rosenblatt, Stephen Mack Jones, Juliet Grames, and Luann Rice, this is Tom Straw saying thanks and good night.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good night.